and Happy New Year, Generation W, and welcome to Refresh 99. 99 shows. You know what that means? We're not that far away. Next show, 100, and we'll be celebrating. But as you well know, or maybe you don't because you're new for 2025, this is a time to connect, be inspired, to learn something new, and ultimately feel a bit better about ourselves and this time we spent together. So, how is everyone in 2025? I have to tell you, I've been listening to debates about how long you can say Happy New Year. So in the chat, I'm just curious if people want to put in how long you think you can say it. I got an email from a friend a few days ago who said that January 4th was his cutoff. So for the record, today is January 15th. I just wish you all a Happy New Year. I am still saying it because my personal cutoff is January 31st. I don't know. I just think that I'm still getting Christmas holiday cards into January. So this idea of wishing somebody happy new feels good, right? It's about that collective experience of ushering something that is offering a reset, right? A fresh perspective. You get to turn the page. You get to take a deep breath. You get to exhale. Ivy's going to talk to us about all of that, right? So the idea that we can sort of linger in this wishing each other goodness for the new year, I like that. And yet, with the swirl of the world, which is happening all around us, the pull of community feels more important than ever. The pull of connecting with people, engaging in real life, supporting, helping, laughing, even crying together. And I just want to say a note to our community of firefighters and first responders. Some of those you might remember, we had Toni Washington, who's the woman that leads the National Organization of Women in Fire. Our truly brave and committed frontline heroes and heroines are facing really the unimaginable. And it's interesting when the unimaginable is brought into our living rooms, the safety of our living rooms, understanding that living rooms and homes, thousands of houses are no longer. We see it and it's still hard to comprehend. So there's lots of good people and organizations that are gathering supplies and goods to help our friends on the West Coast. Take a look what you can. Let's all do what we can because coming together for community, and those are, I think, the most heartwarming stories that I'm seeing coming from LA. People are just helping each other. And today, that's why we're glad that Ivy's with us, right? Ivy Watts. What a perfect name, Ivy Watts. You light it up. You are a bright light. And I think that the work that you do, the books that you've written, the author, if you don't know, she's the author of You Are Worth Fighting For, which honors her late mother, and I'm sure she's going to tell us about her mother. It's a book that tries to give us valuable tools for introspection, fostering mental wellness, and cultivating self-love. One of her chapters is titled, You Are a Beautiful Work in Progress. Yes, we are. We are trying to progress every day, Ivy. So welcome to 2025, show 99, the family of Generation W. We appreciate you coming to join us.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And I think my take with the Happy New Year, I think, all month totally makes sense. I have a friend once that I think it was like April and she said it. I was like, I think we're past that at this point, but I love the joy piece there. But definitely so excited to be here today and having this conversation, starting off 2025 in a positive way.
Totally. I actually think there's probably something every month that we can come up with, but right now I'm into the Happy New Year thing. I think Kathy, so every email I write, Happy New Year. So listen, let's talk a little bit about you because we always want to learn about our guests. I mean, you're going to teach us, but we're going to learn a little bit about you. You were a star track athlete at the University of New Haven. And we know being a collegiate athlete can be very demanding. Tell us a little bit about that and how that experience perhaps led you to where you are today.
Yeah, definitely. So I was a track athlete my entire life, and it was really my identity. It's really all that I knew about myself. And being a collegiate track athlete, there was so much pressure to succeed, to perform, and really to have that kind of suck it up mentality. And I have been struggling with my mental health for most of my life, but really struggled in silence. And when I got to college and was under that pressure filled environment, and I felt like if I talked about what I was going through, I might be labeled as weak. It unfortunately led me to struggle even more with my mental health. And so I had all these really big goals for myself, and I desired to be perfect and for the world to see me as perfect. But I had a lot of that negative internal dialogue that kept me from reaching those goals, and really fueled a lot of that negative self-talk and self-hate. And so it was a tough environment to be in, where there was so much of that pressure when I had that anxiety and negative self-talk and low self-esteem, and I didn't have the tools to support me through the challenges that I was facing, because mental health was just never talked about. And so that's really led me to be where I am today, and was really the impetus of starting this work as a mental health speaker, because I struggled so much and I felt so alone. And I felt like nobody understood. And so I just really wanted to be part of changing the dynamic in the conversation. Once I was finally able to get help for myself after college, I was like, I want other people to feel less alone, because I just felt like nobody understood what I was going through.
Isn't that there's so many narratives in what you just said. First of all, there's been such a spotlight on athletes and mental health. This idea of
Right.
sucking it up, that's what makes a strong athlete, and we can talk a little bit about that. But this idea of loneliness and us believing that everything that happens to us, we are the only ones. And I talked a little bit about community, coming together, sharing, right? We are not the only ones. There's so many people that are sharing similar feelings, self-doubt. Well,
Well, I think, Donna, you're breaking up a little. Donna, do you mind repeating the last part of that? You broke up a little bit.
basically, what I asked you is, where did all the pressure come for you?
Yeah, a lot of that was internalized pressure. I think so much of that is like when we have that the idea of success for ourselves, and what we should be doing. And I think I had a lot of that narrative for myself. Growing up, I think I always just chased out perfection. I remember growing up, my parents used to reward me financially if I got all A's or all A's and B's. And I think internally, I started to realize that part of my self-worth was attached to my accomplishments, and getting love and validation was attached to my accomplishments as well. And so I feel like there was a lot of that pressure put on me externally as well, but I internalized a lot of it. And so if I was ever just a half a second or a second off of my goal, I internalized that as me not being perfect, because then I wasn't meeting that standard that my coach set for me. So it became this dynamic of this, again, the pressure, and just always feeling like I wasn't good enough.
All right. Do you feel like you're good enough now?
So I've done a ton of work, and I definitely feel like I'm at this space now where I know my worth, and I know that I am good enough, and being able to see that, I was more than an athlete, and now I'm more than a mom, and I am this incredible person, and I have so many great qualities that I bring. I don't think that's something of being like conceited or stuck up. I think it's just knowing and owning who you are. And it's actually been such a beautiful journey to be like, yeah, like I am beautiful. I am amazing. Like I have all these great qualities about me. And I think it just allows me to carry myself in a more positive light. And it's just been great. It's such a great change for me. So yes, I do feel good enough now.
That's well, maybe you can help us, because I am sure of all of us who are here have these bouts of, am I worthy? Right? Am
Mm.
I enough? Um, and you obviously hit a point, and you have come to be able to step outside of that. What's the first thing that you would recommend to us? What would you share about your journey that would be helpful as we approach the new year with good spirits? And I just want to let you know, most everyone thinks to the end of January. Although I saw somebody say, I think until the first time you see, if the first time you see somebody, you can say it. Although, so if I see somebody in June, I'm going to say Happy New Year. What? Why not? Anyway,
I love it. Yeah, no, definitely. I think the first step is just really acknowledging your worth, and being able to stand true in who you are, and learning to love yourself. I think it's so easy. We're so easily wired to be negative, and we're so easily comparing ourselves to others, that we often do feel like we are not enough. And again, we're not reaching our goals, and we have that negative narrative. One of the big things that really worked for me was positive affirmations, and not just saying, I am worthy, I am good enough, I am capable, but also thinking about the why behind some of those affirmations. So simple of just saying, like, I am kind. Maybe that's something that's hard for you to wrap your mind around. Why are you kind? Are you kind because you like to give compliments to other people? Are you kind because you hold the door open for other people? Writing down the why behind some of those affirmations. And if you can't think of any affirmations, asking your friends and family members who love you, asking them the things that they adore about you, and the things that make you strong, and things that they admire. You can write those things down, those qualities down, and then ask yourself, well, why are they saying this about me? Why are they saying I'm a hard worker? Why are they saying I'm resilient or confident? and start to think about different things in your life, challenges you've overcome or accomplishments that you've had that make you that quality. And I think that's a really great way to start the foundation of rewiring your brain. But it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. And I think that's the one thing we have to do is give ourselves grace and patience and know that with consistency of practicing positivity and self-love, we start to own ourselves in a different way and to see our worth. So I would say that's definitely one of the biggest first steps is just like that consistent practice of self-love and positivity.
Wow, that's great. And I just want to remind everybody who's with us that your questions and comments are welcome. We love to share your questions. Ivy will take them directly as well. Ivy, it's interesting. I read something in Axios. I don't know how many of you here read Axios. It was all about this idea of asking people good things about you. Like, what would they say that's good about you? And you ask for that. And it's funny, my sister did that the other day. She goes, somebody asked me this and they said this about me, and I could hear her pride. I think as women, I just want to know that there's a difference between men and women. But as women, we always feel like that could be boastful. You said it. I'm not trying to be braggadocious or anything like that. Why is that?
Yeah, definitely. I think just from a societal perspective, we should be quiet and kind of fit in the mold. And I think it definitely is, it's scary to own yourself. You're thinking, like, what are people going to think about me? Are they going to start talking negatively? And then you have that fear that then only spirals your own negative mindset about yourself. So I think from a societal perspective and a cultural perspective, women, girls grow up and are almost taught to be silenced and to not use their voice as much. And I think that speaks to the bigger picture around why we don't talk about our mental health so often, especially seeking out professional help if we need it. I mean, we often do just say, okay, it's better for me just to keep things all on the inside. So I think it is just a societal perspective, a cultural perspective. But I think it's so important for us to remember that we have a voice, and it's important to be able to recognize all of those incredible things about you, because when you have more positivity in your life and you carry yourself in a more positive way, more positive opportunities come to you. When I was negative with myself, more negative people, more negative opportunities, more like all of those things, I got further away from reaching my goal. It became this vicious negative cycle for me. And so since changing my mindset to being more positive, it's been such an incredible, positive, uplifting shift for me. And I think that that's something to really be able to start to own. And I saw someone went in the chat and said, I am strong. I am strong. I can do this, Julia. Yes, I mean, I completely agree. It's like start today. I think that's also beautiful. Like you don't have to wait until you're really, really struggling to start laying that foundation of self-love. Like you can start today on January 15th and really just start pouring into yourself and doing the work to build
Right.
that foundation.
And celebrate Happy New Year with your right on January 5th. This is the beginning. Um,
Exactly.
your book, there's a poignant story. It's called You Are Worth Fighting For. Show it to us, of course.
Here
Yay.
it is.
Uh,
Yeah.
tell us about the motivation for that book, and then we'll go through some of the great lessons that you'd like to share.
Yeah, so my mom, who was and is my best friend, passed away in 2021 from pancreatic cancer. And that was a really challenging situation for me, of course. And I wanted to figure out a way to honor her life because she was just such this influential and powerful and amazing, kind spirit. And I wanted to find a way to really honor her while also honoring the work I do around mental wellness and self-love. And I think, too, after losing my mom, I had done all this work beforehand of self-love and mental wellness and really working through the challenges that I had faced in college. When I lost her, I felt like I had lost a huge piece of myself and took a setback step in my own self-care journey. And so I think this book was really good for me too, to remind myself that I could keep moving forward and that I was worth fighting for. And I wanted to share that message with everyone else. So my book, You Are Worth Fighting For, is a compilation of 11 of my mom's life lessons. The one thing about my mom is that she said different life lessons over and over and over again. So they're very much stuck in my head. She had these different little witty sayings. And so I take each life lesson and put my own spin on it to help people to find their own sense of mental wellness and self love. So sayings that go all the way from pack your patience, like she said to me when I was sitting in traffic, and helping you to recognize that you're a beautiful work in progress, like you mentioned, Donna. And so being able to really give yourself that grace and pack your patience through the journey, all the way to, which was her most famous one, nothing less than a bath and a half. So that one I heard every single day of my childhood. Growing up, the four of us, one bathroom. My mom hated that. And she'd always say, like, make sure you never buy a house that has nothing less than a bath and a half. So we heard that all the time. And so that just kind of became the premise
Oh,
of
that's
our
really nice.
family. And so
Uh-huh.
I changed that. And so made it so making sure that you never go after anything less than you deserve, and, all the things that you're worthy of. So it's been a really great journey of honoring her life. I know she's up there, like, there's a book about me. So
Oh,
that's
isn't
been
that
really
great?
cool.
Yeah, and I can tell that makes you feel good in honoring her, right? This idea of giving also builds our self-esteem, right? I love what Cynthia wrote. She said, "My best is good enough," right? I
Yeah.
love that. Um, I'm looking at my notes right here. You said another quote your mom told you was, "Look at yourself as a third person and ask yourself, is this good for me?" Right? I don't know how many of us say, well, if I was giving this advice to another person, I'd say this, but to yourself, maybe not so much.
Right. Right. Yes, we are all so guilty of that in different ways. And, for me, I was in, some really unhealthy relationships, and my mom was trying to guide me to make different decisions. And I remember her saying that to me all the time. And a lot of times it's hard for us to reflect and look inward, but it is really so important to ask yourself, what would you say to a best friend struggling with something similar? What would you say to someone else in this situation? What advice would you give to them? And also, reflecting with yourself about what you need in those different scenarios is also really great. So taking the space to just ask yourself, like, I think reflection is something that we don't often do enough, of just pausing, reflecting, checking in with ourselves, asking how we're feeling. When we can assess ourselves, and looking at it kind of from like that high story view of that third person, as my mom tried to allude to, really just being able to see, okay, what would an outside person say to me, and how can I start to apply that to myself, I think is a really great tool to begin
Right.
your journey as well.
It's so funny when you can say, oh, a third person will say this. And yet you still hold on, right? I love what Rachel's asking, which is, what is the hardest part of continuing to stay positive? If you're in a room with negativity, what do you do to keep it from influencing you?
Yeah, that's a really great question, especially if you're around people who are negative. I've had to make some really challenging decisions to change the capacity of people in my life, of how often I had them in my life, because they were very negative, and bringing me down and causing me to be more negative. That's a really hard thing to do, to change your circle, but it's also a really empowering thing to do. Really are a reflection of the people who you are around. And I think the hardest part probably of staying positive is that we are wired to be negative. And so we are all constantly thinking these negative thoughts. It is a consistent practice to have those moments and those glimmers of positivity in your life. So I think that's one of the hardest things, is we are so easily down on ourselves. You have to consistently remind yourself to be positive. But if you don't have that moment again of reflection to give yourself that positivity, you're going to continue that negative spiral. So that's where I think it's really important to have that scheduling in every day, where I had, as I mentioned, I was doing those affirmations every day, writing the why behind them. I think that's a really important practice to have in your life, to constantly have that positivity.
Affirmations every day. Like it.
Yeah, so that's what I did at the beginning, and I still do this. I think I took some time when I wasn't, and I think I could definitely see the negative impact that had on my life. But in the beginning of my self-love journey, I was writing down 5 to 10 affirmations every day. It was so difficult for me because, again, I was so negative with myself. I had never said anything positive to myself before. So this was a big shift for me, but that consistency over time did make a difference. And then I have now, just recently in the last couple of months, made it a practice again, because I had fallen off of doing it consistently. And I think now, being able to look in the mirror, I can actually feel those affirmations again. And it does help me through some of the harder days I experience.
Let me just say welcome to everyone to Refresh, show 99. We are with the amazing Ivy Watts, so appropriately named. Doesn't she just light us up? Watts? I'm sure people have said that before. She's making sure we understand how we can make our self-care a priority, which I hear all the time. And yet I'm not sure I'm good enough at it, but it's good to be reminded. Like we need to be reminded that we're um, I also wanted to know that Abby Pedigo has joined us. She's one of those outstanding firefighters. That's her profession, and she teaches everyone about fire safety. She's part of that group fire we talked about. And Abby, we just mentioned our community, our family, our friends out on the West Coast, and know that whatever you can do, that you are. So thanks for being with us. Rachel, great question. I know that you have put together a list. We always ask our guests to put together a list of 3 things they would like to leave us with. So, self-care a priority in your life. Just talk, let's talk us through these.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely, I think as we were talking about with the affirmations, but in just general, making self-care a priority in our lives, it's so easy because we're so busy. Our culture is so fast-paced. We're so go, go, go that it's easy to say, I don't have time to practice self-care, or I'm not good at taking care of myself, or I'm not worthy of taking care of myself, or somebody else has it worse than me. And so I should just suck it up, as we talked about earlier, that mentality that we have. I should just suck it up. I should just keep moving forward and push through. But when we do that, when we don't take care of ourselves, that's when our mental health challenges only grow and grow and grow. And that's exactly what happened for me. So anxiety turned into the self-hate, which turned into feeling like a failure, losing my identity, struggling with depression, struggling with thoughts of not wanting to be here anymore. And so really recognizing that you can take the space to pour into yourself, and you don't have to wait like I did until you're at the space where you're at your breaking point. You can start pouring into yourself if you're stressed out about finances, if you're going through a breakup, if you're just having a tough day. Like we all have had challenges in our lives, and it's important to know that you can take care of yourself. So one of the things I really encourage you to do is to find mindful moments in your day. Self-care doesn't have to be something that takes hours or even a half hour. You can take space in a meeting session, just plant your feet on the ground and close your eyes and just take a couple of deep breaths. And just that moment of taking a deep breath is really healing. And that doesn't take a lot of time. Movement is something huge that I really am an advocate for, being a former collegiate athlete. That can be a full exercise, like working out or taking a walk or yoga, but also just taking space at your desk to just stretch your arms out or move your head side to side if you're able to do those things. And so recognizing that that movement is also a really great release in your body as well, and can help you to feel more connected and keep moving
Oh, Ivy,
forward.
all right, Ivy, listen. All right, let's do it now. Lead us in it. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah,
What are we
let's
doing?
do
What are we
it.
doing here?
Yeah, everyone just stretch your arms for like stretch one arm right now. And as you're doing this, just like allow yourself to focus on your breathing too. And yeah, close your eyes and just be centered and just allow yourself to be in this moment. You can switch arms if you're able to do that. Just allow yourself to stretch. And now you can take a moment, bring your head, you can release your arms and just move your head side to side, shoulders up and down. If you're able to, shake your legs out, and you can come back.
That's, I think we should do that at Gen W. I think we should actually do this. It's really, really helpful. I just came back from a trip. I am not a yoga person. I'm sure there's many of you who are. I decided I would jump in, and I can tell you that all the things I thought were like, it was transformative.
Yes.
So just even taking, we'll have a what moment. What? What are we doing? Well, we're just going to take a moment to just stretch, move our necks around, think a little bit, breathe
Yeah.
in, all incredibly, incredibly helpful. Because you've been an elite athlete. And by the way, anybody here who has any tips or questions, please, you're invited to offer them and ask them. What is it about competing at an elite level that really takes such a toll on our young athletes?
Yeah, I think because being an athlete is treated like and is in many ways a full-time job, but on top of that, you have all these other demands and pressures too. And again, there's the expectations from coaches and from teammates, from your fans, and so there's just so many different layers to it that I think it just is a difficult space to be in when you're in that pressure filled environment. And for many athletes, especially in college, you are on scholarship. And so you're there because you're making sure that you're going to be able to support your family. Now there's all this name, image, and likeness going on, right? So there's all these different layers too that I think just allow for that stress and anxiety to build. You're also comparing yourself to your teammates, to other competitors on other teams, and just feeling like you're not, doing as well as them, or you're not as strong as them, you're not as smart as them. And then you have your academics if you're a collegiate athlete. And then you have, your work life and your family. So there's and relationships and social. So just a lot of different spaces that really can add a lot of pressure for
Yeah.
athletes, especially as well with the coaches expecting you to perform no matter what other pieces are going on.
Yeah, you talk a lot about self-comparison. And in the age of
Mhm.
social media, I don't know
Mhm.
how many have read Jonathan Haidt's book about the anxious generation. Um, how do we help ourselves, who are clearly also addicted to, what do they call them, the death scroll and brain rot? But certainly our kids. Uh, how do we how do we help in that situation? Because clearly that is an added on element of the creation of anxiety and lack of self-worth and some of the things that you're addressing.
Yeah, definitely. Social media is such an easy space to feel like you're not doing good enough because you get the snapshot view of somebody else's perfect life. And I think so many of us had that internal goal of perfection. And that's something that, I call myself a recovering perfectionist because I struggled with perfectionism very much so. And in many ways, it's ingrained in me. So I have to, again, like I said, have that constant consistency to rewire my brain. But I think one of the pieces in comparison is being able to see that who you are, no matter what you have or haven't accomplished, no matter where you have or haven't been compared to somebody else, is still good enough. So no matter what accomplishment you reach, you as a person are still good enough. You are good enough as you are, and you have all these beautiful, unique, wonderful things about you that make you you, and being you is your superpower. So you bring all of these qualities to the workplace, to your family, to your relationships. And so nobody else is you. Nobody else can help others in the way that you do or make yourself feel good in the way that you do if you allow yourself to do that. And so it's about really owning that and being able to see, okay, I am worthy as I am. I am good enough as I am. And that other person is also wonderful in so many different ways. But that doesn't take away from all of the great pieces that I add to the world as well. And so that's one of the ways I think is we can see other people as doing great things, but then also taking space. So one of the activities I really like to do is
Yes.
to write down all of the accomplishments that I've had in the past, big or small. So that could be as simple as like, I got out of bed today, if that's something that you've been struggling with, or I ate a healthy lunch, or I even ate lunch, because sometimes that can be difficult when we're struggling or just going through our days. Or they can be really big accomplishments, like I got a really great award, or I, you know, met a new person, I got myself out of my comfort zone. Whatever it might be, writing those accomplishments down so you can look back in the future and say, wow, like I have accomplished so much. And then also thinking about the times that you thought you weren't going to be able to get through, challenges that you faced, that you thought that you weren't going to be able to see the other side, and yet you did. And being able to say, okay, if I could get through those challenging times, then I can get through anything. So when you're able to see the accomplishments that you have done and the times that you've gotten through, that's a demonstration of your strength and your worth and your compassion and your courage, all of those different pieces. And it allows you to just say, okay, wow, I really am this incredible person and I deserve to keep moving forward. And I think those things, having them written down, is a really great reminder for ourselves, because when we
Right.
are struggling, it can feel like we're really stuck. So it's really great to have it written down.
Right. We have the another good fortune of having Tiffany Wild White join us today, and she also has done work with athletes. I don't know if you two should meet. You both like
Yeah.
Watts and White, whatever. But she always said, she said, ink it, just don't think it. And so that's supporting what you're saying, right? Writing it down, putting it in a place where you can take it. I like to write anything. I think it helps your brain just ingest and Wait, that's my line now. Ingest and digest. It's not as good as ink it and ink it, don't just think it. I don't think. Anyway, um, as you look forward in shaping your impact about what you're doing, How do you view that? I mean, do you feel like in a sense you're out in the world, you're speaking, you're writing books. You have another book, right?
I do. Yeah, I wrote a children's book, Forever My Baby You'll Be.
Okay, tell us about that one.
Yeah, so I have a 3-year-old daughter, Charlotte, and she's, more embracing being a big girl now. But when I wrote this book, she was not interested in being a big girl at all. She didn't want to use the potty. She didn't want to sleep on her own. She did not want to walk on her own in parking lots. She just wanted it to stay as a baby. And so I wrote this book to help babies with the transition of becoming big kids and also parents with the transition of having their babies become big kids and helping both see that, forever you're going to be my baby. So it's just a sweet story. It's funny. It's sweet to just help to maintain that connection through the years.
How many times have you read it to her?
She loves it. So pretty much every week we make sure that we read it. So she loves being the star of it.
Does she know all the words?
No, not yet. Not yet. We're
Okay,
working
well,
on it though.
but I was just, I was just curious. One other great comment was from Andrea. Thanks, Andrea. Journal, and I guess you must be a journal person too. You know what's so cool is on my phone. You don't want to be on your phone, but Apple just included a new journaling app. So when I take a bunch of pictures, I don't know if any of you have that experience, it will come back to you and say, "Hey, do you want to journal about this?" And it's like, wow, talk about serving it up. But then I
Yeah.
don't, I don't know, whatever. But it's okay. You also talk about asking for help is okay. Why do we not want to ask for help?
Yeah. A lot of us have grown up with the stigma. The stigma is really all around us. It's definitely lessened in many years, but the stigma is all around us. That stigma that communicates that if you talk about what you're going through, you might get labeled as lazy, weak, crazy, dangerous. We don't want those negative stigmas or labels on us. So instead, we say, well, it's safer, easier to keep it on the inside. Or we don't want to be a burden on somebody else. We don't want to talk to a friend about it if they're already struggling with something that you know about it, or you feel like you talk to them once about it and you're still struggling. You don't want to necessarily bring it back up and be that burden. So we have these internal fears. A lot of them are caused by the external stigma. And so then we say, okay, I'm not going to talk about my mental health. And that's exactly what I experienced too, why I struggled so much in silence and didn't talk about it. But I think to change the narrative, it's so important for us to see that it is not a sign of weakness to reach out for help. It's actually the strongest thing you can do to be able to recognize, I'm struggling right now. Again, that reflection. And I know that it's okay, but it's also more than okay for me to get the help that I've always deserved through this struggle. And it's okay for me to start now. And it's okay for me to use my voice and reach out for help. And I can't get through this alone. And that's more than okay. So it's a really important thing to know that you have a voice, and your voice is so powerful to be able to speak about what you're going through and unpack those challenges that are causing a lot of heaviness on your chest. It can allow you to feel lighter. It can allow you to feel more connected to yourself. And for many of us, maybe we're not yet at that point to talk to a therapist or even to talk to a friend or a partner or a loved one. But that's where I think journaling does come in as a really great tool if you're not yet ready to talk to somebody. It's another great way just to use your voice and to let it out. So that's what I would really encourage all of you is to know, like, don't let those feelings just sit on your chest. Let them out in some way, because that's really what's going to help you to heal. And it can be uncomfortable to sit in those feelings and to allow yourself to express them. But that's when some of that longer term healing happens rather than just pushing it off as insignificant, because that's when, again, those mental health challenges just keep growing. So letting it out by talking about it with somebody or journaling is a really great tool to have that healing.
Was your mom surprised to find out that you were in that state? Did she track this with you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I think the unfortunate thing is, growing up in a Black family, we never really talked about mental health. I definitely, not necessarily from my mom, but from my dad, got some messages around that I think internalized a lot of it for myself. My mom always knew that I was a stressed out kid, and she was more welcoming towards talking about it, but there was just so much fear that I'd already built up from some of those other messages that I felt like I couldn't talk to her about the larger issues. So she knew in college I was stressed out, that I was maybe sad sometimes if I didn't reach my goals, like a natural sad, but she didn't realize how much it was eating away at me when I was back in my dorm room, or how all the negative things I was saying to myself, or how much I hated myself, or I didn't know who I was, or that I was struggling with suicidal ideation after college. Like she didn't know any of those any of those things. And so I wish she did. I wish I had talked to her earlier. So she found out later, and she was surprised. I mean, it definitely is hard to hear as a mother. I can only imagine, but she was supportive for me, and my dad has since been supportive for me. And now they've seen, the power of talking about your mental health and the power of therapy and the benefits of it. So it's been cool to play a role in helping to reduce the stigma for them. For my dad more so now. My mom, since she passed away, but it was really cool to be part of that process with them.
Yeah, I imagine you have to find that one safe person. How do you figure out who that person is?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think one of the biggest things is that, when you have your group of people, your tribe, there's going to be different people to call on for different challenges that you have. Like, I have one friend that's really great if I talk to her about relationships, but if I talk to her about like a financial struggle or something, she won't be as great. Like, and vice versa. Or like, I can have a really good friend that's, good about a relationship problem, but, different topics. So I think that's one thing to note is if someone's not really jiving with you on a different topic, it's important to be able to know that you can go to somebody else for that. You don't have to kind of force yourself to go to that person if it doesn't feel good. But one thing I want to really just hone in on is our brain loves to tell us that we're alone and that no one will understand. But it's important to know that there's always someone out there. And so maybe, again, you're not feeling like you're connecting with some of the people in your support group. There are a lot of different resources that you can utilize to at least just get some of that help in that moment, whether it's a crisis text line or the suicide prevention lifeline that you can call if you're just having a hard time. And so you're having that person just to reach out to. But I would just really encourage you to know that there's different people that you can use for different challenges. And that's an important distinction to know when you're reaching out. It can help it to feel a little bit less scary and less hard.
Correct. And then you also have yourself. You can talk to yourself. I talk to myself a lot.
Hmm.
Well, people will
Yeah.
see me, my lips are moving. What are you? I'm just talking to myself. I mean, sometimes when you say something out loud, it changes it, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes, for sure. And I think that's why it's so important of like what you say to yourself matters, right? So if you're saying those negative things out loud to yourself, like, oh, I just suck at this, I'm just such a failure, right? It's what your body is beginning to believe, and you carry yourself in that more negative way. And so talking to yourself in an uplifting way as much as you can is also a really great tool to use. But yeah, I'm an advocate. I talk to myself all the time. I'm always thinking out loud, and I think that's also where journaling could be a great tool as well.
Right. We have just like about a little bit of time to go. You have mentioned several times in our conversation about how our brains are wired. And
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about that. So I think it's an
Yeah,
important point, very important point.
yeah. So from a fight or flight perspective, so if we think way back, so we were wired to be negative, to be looking out for threats, to make sure that we were keeping ourselves safe. And so oftentimes our brain is just doing that. So if you think in a different situation, like when you're, for instance, in a really toxic relationship and you know that you deserve better, but you stay, leaving is a really courageous act. And that takes a lot of work to do. And so your brain instead will stay in that negative situation because it feels safer because it's what you know instead of taking that risk. So oftentimes when we take that risk, it feels so scary. Our brain kind of keeps us back into what we know because that's what feels safe. And so because of that, we are wired to kind of seek out that negative, and it's almost like a protective response to keep us safe. But really, those moments when we're staying in that comfort zone, we're not growing, right? We're just stuck in that moment. And then we have more of that negative perception that makes us feel worse about ourselves. So taking that risk, even though it's really scary and it feels unsafe to your body, that is truly when the growth happens. That's when the healing happens. That's when you learn more about yourself, when you step into yourself and really become the most beautiful version of yourself. So it's scary to take that risk, but I found those times that I've allowed myself to listen to my true inner voice and not just listen to what's trying to keep me safe are the times that I've really been able to accomplish more of my goals and make decisions that felt right for me and not necessarily for others, but got me to where I needed to be.
That is a very, very powerful and important lesson to leave us all on, right? Which is we need to embrace risk to grow. And ultimately, while we're not as safe, which makes our brain tell us we're in trouble, you know what? That could be where some of the most as you said, the most beautiful things happen, which
Yeah.
ultimately actually opens up the whole world and makes us feel safer. So there's like this
Yeah.
inverse reaction. That's really amazing. Ivy, can't thank you enough. I can't thank everybody. Happy New Year. Alex, appreciated your comment. Refresh will return. Please, please join us. It will be celebratory. January 29th. Our producer, Sherry Levin, has been focused on this for months and months and months. I think she's looked at every single show. She's quoting them in her sleep. So our 100th Refresh episode will revisit some of our most memorable moments, which some of you have been a part of. Many of you have. We'll be bringing Dr. Orender Johnson, who's the professor of strategic leadership and development at the U.S. Naval War College and happens to be the chair of our board and a powerful, powerful speaker. Jamie Oken, who's I think been on several shows, is more 25 years as a psychotherapist and life coach. This all began as a way for our W community to keep connected. We talk about the power of community, and I love some of the messages people sent me privately about how much this means to them. Just connecting, feeling others, learning, right? Safe spaces. All right, our brains are safe here, Ivy. There you go. But they've said refresh has been a hugely positive, empowering, and uplifting thing. And this is like journaling. Come to refresh. It leaves me hopeful and inspired. So we'd love to hear from you. I think, Lewis, if you can put in the chat, send us a note at info@genwnow.com, some of your most memorable takeaways, and we'll talk about them. Big news is we are explorers, Generation W. Explore, that's our theme. I feel like I have my Vasco da Gama explorer's hat on, been working, digging in. We have amazing, interesting, provocative, compassionate speakers coming. I think we're beginning to announce them right now for a day of exploration, inside, outside, and beyond. So March 28th, we're hoping you can join us in Jacksonville, Florida. There's nothing about really touching the skin, but also we will deliver virtually, and that also has been a really terrific experience and also community building. So connect with us, and remember, Happy New Year. If you haven't seen somebody in 5 years and you see them in August, what the heck? They won't even know what New Year you're wishing them happy, but it's still happy. Ivy, thank you. Sherry, great job. Gen W team, thank you. And we'll see you for 100 on January 29th. Take care, everyone.